Sir? Can you hear me? Hey, stay with me.
That was 19-year-old Felix Jackson, soaking wet, $5 in his pocket, kneeling on cold concrete in the worst thunderstorm Cleveland had seen all year.
Please, help me. I can't feel my hands anymore. Don't close your eyes, sir. Look at me. I'm right here.
Felix pulled out the crumpled $5 bill, the only groceries his grandmother would see tonight. He pressed it into the old man's frozen palm. Then he unzipped his jacket, his dead father's jacket, the only thing he had left of him, and draped it over the stranger's trembling shoulders. Felix didn't know that stranger's name, and he sure didn't know that in exactly 3 days, that one small moment on a freezing bench would come back to find him in ways he couldn't have dreamed of. Most people drive past Garfield Heights and don't look twice. It's the kind of neighborhood where half the streetlights don't work, where the sidewalks have cracks deep enough to swallow a bicycle tire, where for lease signs hang in shop windows so long they turn yellow. This is where Felix Jackson lived. This is where Felix Jackson survived. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a brick building on East 118th Street with his grandmother, Dorothy Jackson. The elevator hadn't worked since before Felix was born. The hallway smelled like mildew and old carpet, and every winter the heating would cut out at least twice, leaving them layering blankets and boiling water on the stove just to keep the air warm enough to sleep. Felix was 19. He should have been in college by now. He had the grades. He had the acceptance letter, still pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like the state of Ohio. Cleveland State University. A full year ago, that letter showed up in the mail, and Dorothy had cried so hard she couldn't speak for 10 minutes. But the tuition number at the bottom of the page might as well have been written in a foreign language. $18,000 a year. They couldn't even cover $1,800, so the letter stayed on the fridge, and Felix stayed in Garfield Heights. Every morning he woke up at 5:45. Not to an alarm, his body just knew. He'd lie still for a second, staring at the ceiling where the paint was peeling in long brown strips, and he'd listen. If he could hear Dorothy coughing in the next room, it was a bad day. If it was quiet, it was a better one. Dorothy had COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, the kind that made her lungs sound like crumpled paper bags. She needed 2 inhalers and a monthly prescription that cost more than their electric bill. Most months, Felix had to choose, lights or medicine. He always chose medicine. By 6:30, he was already dressed. Same rotation of 3 shirts, same pair of jeans with the stitched-up knee, and the jacket. His father's jacket. A faded denim thing with a torn left pocket and a collar that didn't sit right anymore. Felix wore it every single day. Didn't matter if it was 90 degrees outside. That jacket went where he went. Raymond Jackson had worn that jacket the day he died. Felix was 8 years old when it happened. A machinery malfunction at the Braddock steel plant. They told Dorothy it was instant. Felix never believed that. He still didn't. After his father passed, his mother, Lorraine, tried. She really tried. She picked up nursing shifts at a hospital in Akron, 2 cities over. She'd send money every month, 100 here, 200 there. But she worked nights, slept days, and the distance between Akron and Cleveland stretched wider with every year. Felix hadn't seen her in 4 months. He didn't blame her. He understood. But understanding something and not feeling the weight of it, those are 2 very different things. By 7:15 each morning, Felix was at Caldwell's Corner Grocery, 3 blocks from the apartment. It was a small store, narrow aisles, fluorescent lights that buzzed too loud, a cooler in the back that leaked every other Thursday. The owner, Mr. Caldwell, was 62, bad knees, worse temper. But he gave Felix steady hours and never shorted his pay. In Garfield Heights, That was enough to earn loyalty. Felix stocked shelves, swept floors, unloaded deliveries, and worked the register when Mr. Caldwell's knees locked up. 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. $9.25 an hour. Then, at 5 p.m., he clocked out, rode his bicycle home, checked on Dorothy, heated whatever was in the fridge, and waited. At 7 p.m., his second shift started. Night Dash, a food delivery app. Felix didn't have a car, so he used his bike, a rusty Schwinn he'd pulled from a dumpster 2 years ago and fixed up with YouTube tutorials and zip ties. He'd ride 3, sometimes 4 hours a night through Cleveland traffic, rain or shine, hauling bags of Thai food and burgers to people in warm apartments who never looked him in the eye. On a good night, he'd make $35. On a bad one, $12. He kept a notebook, a small black composition book he bought at the dollar store. Every night before bed, he'd sit at the kitchen table under the one light that still worked and write 2 numbers. What he earned that day, and how much closer he was to the tuition number on the fridge. After 11 months of tracking, he had $4,112 saved. He needed $18,000. At this rate, it would take him 6 more years. Felix did that math once, sitting on the edge of his bed at midnight. He did it once, and he never did it again. But here's the thing about Felix Jackson, and this part matters more than any number in that notebook. He never stopped smiling at people. He held doors open. He carried Mrs. Patterson's groceries up 3 flights of stairs every Saturday, even though she never asked. He slipped extra napkins into every Night Dash delivery. He remembered the names of Mr. Caldwell's grandkids. The world had given Felix almost nothing, and somehow, he kept giving back. But the world wasn't done with Felix Jackson yet. Not even close. Because what was coming, what was 3 days away from finding him, would make every sacrifice, every empty dinner, every mile on that rusty bike worth something he couldn't possibly imagine. The storm came out of nowhere. All day the sky had been a dull, flat gray, the kind Cleveland wore like a uniform from October through March. But nobody expected what rolled in around 8 p.m. The National Weather Service had issued a severe thunderstorm warning at 6:45, but Felix didn't check his phone for weather alerts. He was too busy pedaling. He had 2 more deliveries to finish, 2 more runs, and he could go home. The first drop hit his neck like a cold fingertip. Then came the second. Then the sky just opened. Not rain, but a wall of water. The kind of downpour that turns streets into rivers in under a minute. Wind slammed against his chest so hard he had to squeeze both brakes just to stay upright. Lightning cracked across the skyline. Not distant. Close. The kind you feel in your teeth. Felix pulled his father's jacket tighter and pressed forward. His last delivery was a bag of pho from a Vietnamese place on Superior Avenue. The customer's address was 6 blocks north. He could make it. He had to make it. That delivery was worth $8.50 with tip, and $8.50 was the difference between Dorothy's inhaler refill this week or next. But what Felix didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the delivery wasn't the most important thing waiting for him on those streets tonight. The rain was coming sideways now. Visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Felix rode with one hand on the handlebar and the other shielding his eyes, squinting through sheets of water. The streetlights on Euclid Avenue were flickering, half of them already dead. The road was empty. No cars, no pedestrians. Just Felix, his bike, and the storm. He almost missed it. A shape on the bench. Just a shape. A dark lump at the bus shelter near East 9th Street. Felix's eyes swept past it. His legs kept pedaling. Then the shape moved. A hand, pale, reaching out from the bench, trembling so hard it looked like a leaf in the wind. Felix squeezed the brakes. The Schwinn skidded on the wet pavement, almost throwing him sideways. He steadied himself, one foot on the ground, and looked again. An old man, white, maybe mid-70s, slumping on the bench under the bus shelter's half-broken overhang. He wore a thin button-down shirt, completely soaked through. No jacket, no umbrella, no bag. His silver hair was plastered flat against his skull. His lips had a blue-gray tint that made Felix's stomach drop. This man wasn't waiting for a bus. He was dying out here. Felix dropped his bike on the sidewalk and ran to the bench. "Sir, hey, can you hear me?" The old man's eyes opened. Pale blue, watery, confused. He looked at Felix like he was trying to remember what a person was. I don't." The words came out broken, barely a whisper under the roar of rain. "I don't know where I am." "You're on Euclid Avenue, sir. East 9th. What happened? How long have you been here?" The old man's mouth opened, closed, opened again. His right hand was gripping the edge of the bench so hard his knuckles were bone white. And that's when Felix noticed it, the watch. It sat on the old man's left wrist, silver, heavy, with a face that caught the light from the one working street lamp above. It wasn't a Timex, it wasn't a Casio. It was something else entirely. Something that looked like it cost more than everything Felix owned combined. A tiny crown logo sat at the 12 o'clock mark. Felix didn't recognize the brand. He didn't even think about it. Not then. "Sir, you're freezing. We gotta get you out of this rain." "My wife," the old man murmured. His eyes drifted somewhere past Felix's shoulder, somewhere far away. "I was going to see my wife. I had flowers. Where did the flowers go?" He wasn't making sense. His body was shaking in a rhythm that Felix recognized. Not shivering, but something deeper. Something worse. Felix looked around. The street was deserted. No cars, no open stores. The nearest hospital was at least 20 blocks south. His phone had 4% battery, just enough for one call. But who would come out in this? He looked at the night dash bag on his bike. $8.50 delivery. He looked at the old man. That choice, right there, right in that second, was the kind of choice that most people never have to make. The kind where every option costs you something you can't afford to lose. And what Felix did next is exactly why this story exists. Felix didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee beside the bench and unzipped his backpack. The night dash bag was inside, warm fur sealed tight. He pulled it out and set it on the ground. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out the $5 bill. It was damp, wrinkled, folded into a small square the way he always kept it, tucked behind his phone case like a safety net. That $5 was dinner. That $5 was bread, a can of soup, maybe a carton of eggs if the store had the cheap ones left. He pressed it into the old man's palm. "Here, take this." The old man looked down at the bill. His fingers closed around it slowly, like he didn't understand what it was. "Son, no. I can't take your money. You need it more than I do right now, sir." "But this is your money. You're just a kid." Felix almost laughed. He got that a lot. 19 years old, but people always assumed younger. Maybe it was the way he carried himself. Maybe it was the neighborhood. "I'm good," Felix said. "I promise. Just hold on to it." The old man's chin trembled. Not from the cold this time. Something else. He looked at Felix. Really looked at him. And his eyes changed. The confusion pulled back for just a second, and underneath it was something sharp. Something clear. "You don't even know me," the old man whispered. "Don't need to." Felix stood up and unzipped his jacket. The denim one. His father's jacket. The one with the torn left pocket and the collar that didn't sit right. The one that still smelled like WD-40 and factory soap. Or maybe that was just Felix's memory, filling in what time had taken away. He draped it over the old man's shoulders. The old man grabbed Felix's wrist. Not hard, but firm. Steady. The grip of someone who once held authority. Not someone who'd been sitting helpless on a bench in a storm. Felix noticed that. Filed it away without thinking. "What's your name, son?" "Felix. Felix Jackson." "Felix." The old man repeated it like he was memorizing it. His voice had shifted. The confusion was still there, but underneath, just for a flash, there was something commanding, almost formal. The way a man speaks when he's used to people listening. "What's yours?" Felix asked. "Walter." A pause. "Just Walter." Just Walter. Felix nodded, didn't push. Some people gave you their whole story. Some people gave you a first name and a handshake. Both were fine. "All right, Just Walter. Let's get you somewhere warm." Felix looked up the street. Through the sheets of rain 2 blocks north, he could see the faint yellow glow of the Euclid Avenue bus shelter. The big one, with the enclosed walls and the working heater. If the number 10 bus was still running, he could get Walter on it. Somewhere. Anywhere but here. "Can you stand?" Walter tried. His legs buckled on the first attempt. Felix caught him under the arm. Quickly, without drama, without making it feel like charity. Just one person helping another person stand. "Easy. I got you. Lean on me." They moved through the rain together. Felix on the left, Walter on the right, the denim jacket now dark with water across Walter's back. The wind screamed between the buildings. Every step was a negotiation with the sidewalk. Cracked, uneven, flooded at the curbs. Walter stumbled once. Felix caught him. Walter stumbled again. Felix caught him again. "You're strong," Walter said between heavy breaths. "For someone your age. You carry enough groceries up 3 flights of stairs, you get strong fast." Walter let out a sound, not quite a laugh, but close. The first sign of warmth since Felix found him. They reached the enclosed shelter. Felix helped Walter onto the bench inside. The heater was working, barely, but enough. The rain hammered the plexiglass walls, but in here it was dry. Felix pulled the jacket tighter around Walter's shoulders and sat beside him. "The 10 bus should come through in about 15 minutes. It'll take you downtown. You got somebody you can call?" Walter patted his shirt pocket. Empty. Then his pants pocket. Also empty. "I had a phone. I think I must have left it in the car." "What car?" Walter's eyes clouded again. That faraway look. "There was a car. A black car. Someone was driving me. Somewhere." He shook his head slowly. "I can't remember. I got out. I wanted to walk. I wanted to see the flowers." Felix didn't press. Something was wrong. Not just cold, not just confusion. Something medical. Something deeper. But Felix wasn't a doctor. He was a 19-year-old delivery driver with 4% battery on his phone and no jacket. "Okay," Felix said calmly. "That's okay. The bus will get you downtown. There's a shelter on West 3rd. They'll take you in, get you warm, help you figure out the rest." Walter looked at Felix. That sharp clarity returned to his eyes, brief, flickering, like a signal fire. "You gave me your jacket," Walter said quietly. "That jacket means something to you. I can tell." Felix's jaw tightened. He looked at the floor. "It was my dad's." "Was?" "He passed a long time ago." Walter was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Lower. Careful. The voice of a man choosing his words with precision. Then this jacket is worth more than anything I could give you in return. And you handed it to a stranger in a rainstorm. He paused. I won't forget that, Felix. I need you to hear me when I say that. I will not forget this. The way he said it, steady, deliberate, each word placed like a stone. It didn't sound like an old man making a grateful promise. It sounded like a man making a decision. Felix didn't catch that, not then. The headlights of the number 10 bus cut through the rain. Felix stood, flagged it down, and helped Walter up the steps. The driver gave them both a look, the soaking wet kid and the shivering old man, but didn't say a word. Take care of yourself, Walter. Walter held Felix's gaze from the top step. He pressed one hand against the denim jacket on his chest. You'll see me again, son. Felix smiled, the kind of smile that expects nothing. The doors closed, the bus pulled away, and Felix stood there in the rain, watching the taillights disappear down Euclid Avenue. Then he picked up his bike, grabbed the now cold delivery bag, and started pedaling home. No jacket, no $5, no delivery pay tonight. Just the rain and the road and the quiet feeling that he'd done the right thing. Felix pedaled home in the dark. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it was worse. Heavier, colder, the kind that found every gap in your clothes and settled into your bones. Without his jacket, the wind hit his chest like a fist. His t-shirt was plastered to his skin. His sneakers squelched with every rotation of the pedals. Water ran down his face so fast he could barely keep his eyes open. But Felix wasn't thinking about the cold. He was thinking about the old man's eyes. There was something in them. Something that didn't match the rest of the picture. The soaked shirt, the trembling hands, the confusion. When Walter had grabbed his wrist and said, I will not forget this, his eyes hadn't looked lost. They'd looked locked in, focused. Like a man who'd spent his whole life making decisions that mattered, and had just made another one. Felix shook it off. People said things in moments of crisis. They said thank you like they meant forever, and by morning they'd forgotten your face. That was life. He knew that. He turned onto East 118th Street and carried his bike up the front steps. The elevator was broken, always broken, so he climbed 3 flights, water dripping from his clothes onto every stair. Dorothy was asleep in her recliner. The TV was on, some late-night rerun with the volume too low to hear. Her inhaler sat on the armrest next to a half-finished cup of tea. The apartment smelled like menthol and canned soup. Felix stood in the doorway for a second, just watching her breathe. Every exhale had that faint whistle, the sound he'd learned to measure. Soft whistle meant okay, loud whistle meant bad night, no whistle meant hospital. Tonight was a soft whistle. He exhaled. He crept past her to the kitchen, opened the fridge. A carton of eggs with 2 left, a quarter bottle of hot sauce, a Tupperware container of rice from 2 days ago. No bread, no milk, no soup. He'd given away dinner money, and he knew it. Standing there in his soaking wet shirt, dripping onto the cracked linoleum, Felix felt the weight of that choice for the first time. Not regret, never regret, but weight. The kind of weight that comes from doing the right thing when the right thing costs you something real. He ate the 2 eggs with hot sauce and cold rice, standing up at the counter, didn't bother with a plate. After he changed into dry clothes, he sat at the kitchen table and opened his notebook. The black composition book. He clicked his pen and wrote the date. Under the earned column, he wrote $0. The night dash delivery had gone cold. He'd have to eat the cancellation penalty tomorrow. Under the saved column, the number stayed the same. $4,112. He stared at that number for a long time. Then, underneath it, in small handwriting, he wrote something he'd never written in the notebook before. Not a number, a sentence. Gave my jacket to a man at the bus stop. Hope he made it home. He closed the notebook and went to bed. The room was small. Just a mattress on a metal frame, a plastic crate for a nightstand, and a framed photo on the wall. The photo showed Raymond Jackson standing outside the Braddock steel plant, arms crossed, grinning, wearing a faded denim jacket with a torn left pocket. Felix looked at the photo the way he always did before sleep. Quick, just a glance, just enough to say goodnight. But tonight, the empty hook on the back of his bedroom door, where that jacket had hung every night for 11 years, felt louder than the storm outside. He pulled the blanket up and closed his eyes. 3 blocks away, the number 10 bus had already reached downtown, and the old man in the denim jacket had already made a phone call. Not from a shelter, but from the back seat of a black sedan that had been looking for him all night. But Felix didn't know that. Not yet. The next morning, Felix woke up sore. His legs ached from pedaling through the storm. His throat had that scratchy, tight feeling that meant a cold was coming. And the first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was the empty hook on the back of his door. No jacket. He got dressed, one of his 3 shirts, the jeans with the stitched knee, and headed to Caldwell's Corner Grocery for his morning shift. The walk felt different without the jacket. Lighter, colder, like a piece of him was missing and everyone could see the gap. Mr. Caldwell noticed immediately. "Where's your jacket, kid?" "Gave it away." Mr. Caldwell stared at him over the register. "You gave it away? The one your daddy wore?" "Yes, sir." "To who?" "Just some man at a bus stop." Mr. Caldwell shook his head slowly. He didn't say anything else. But Felix caught the look, half admiration, half worry. The look people give you when they think your heart's too big for your circumstances. The day passed like any other. Stock the canned goods, sweep the back aisle, rotate the milk, smile at Mrs. Patterson when she came in for her weekly groceries, carry them to the door for her even though his arms were tired. But something was different outside. Around noon, Felix stepped out to bring in a delivery from the sidewalk. Across the street, a black sedan was parked at the curb, tinted windows, engine running. It hadn't been there an hour ago. Felix looked at it for a second. Then he picked up the boxes and went back inside. By the time he came out again, the sedan was gone. That evening, during his night dash shift, Felix had a delivery to an office building downtown, one of those glass towers near Public Square that he never had reason to enter. The security guard at the front desk waved him through without looking up. But as Felix waited for the elevator, something on the lobby wall caught his eye. A name, etched in gold letters on a marble plaque beside the elevator doors. Crestline Holdings, founded 1972. And beneath it, a smaller line, Walter S. Bennett, Chairman Emeritus. Felix looked at the name. Walter. Just Walter. His mind flickered. The bench, the rain, the old man's trembling hand, the watch with the tiny crown at 12 o'clock, the way he'd said, "I will not forget this," like he was signing a contract. Nah, couldn't be. Felix shook his head, stepped into the elevator, and delivered the food. But the name stayed with him all night, and what was waiting for him tomorrow would prove that coincidences, real ones, don't exist. 2 days after the storm, Felix had almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. The name on the plaque. The black sedan. The watch that didn't belong on a man sitting alone at a bus stop in the rain. He'd filed it all in the back of his mind under weird stuff that doesn't matter, and moved on. Because that's what you do when you're 19 and broke. You don't chase mysteries. You chase the next paycheck. It was a Thursday. Felix was halfway through his morning shift at Caldwell's, restocking canned beans on aisle 3, when the bell above the front door chimed. He didn't look up. Customers came and went all morning, nothing unusual. Then Mr. Caldwell's voice, low, tight, the way he only sounded when something made him nervous. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Yes, I'm looking for a young man named Felix Jackson. I was told he works here." Felix set down the can of beans. The woman standing at the register was tall, mid-40s, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Felix's rent. Her hair was pulled back in a clean bun. She carried a leather folder under one arm and a pair of sunglasses in the other. Everything about her was precise, pressed, polished, intentional. She looked like she'd never set foot in a store with fluorescent lights in her life. Mr. Caldwell looked at Felix. Felix looked at the woman. "That's me." The woman smiled. Not a big smile, a measured one, professional. "Felix, my name is Catherine Moore. I'm the executive assistant to the chairman emeritus of Crestline Holdings." She paused, let the words land. "I believe you met him 2 nights ago, at a bus stop on Euclid Avenue." The store went quiet. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights seemed to hold their breath. Felix felt his stomach drop. "Walter," he said. "Mr. Walter Bennett. Yes." Mr. Caldwell gripped the edge of the counter. His eyes went wide. In Garfield Heights, you didn't hear names like that in real life. You heard them on the news, on Forbes lists, on the sides of buildings downtown. Walter Bennett wasn't a person to people in this neighborhood. He was a concept, a skyscraper with a name attached. Catherine continued, her voice calm and even. "Mr. Bennett would like to see you. Today, if possible. He's sent a car." Felix blinked. "A car?" "It's parked outside." Felix looked past Catherine, through the smudged glass of the store's front window. There, at the curb, sat a black limousine. Not a sedan, not an SUV. A limousine. Long, polished, gleaming like it had been waxed 10 minutes ago. The driver stood beside the rear door in a dark suit, hands clasped, waiting. On the door panel, a small silver emblem caught the light. A crest. 2 lines beneath it. Crestline Holdings. The same logo Felix had seen on the marble plaque in the lobby 2 nights ago. The same name etched in gold letters. It hit him like a train. Just Walter. The confused old man on the bench. The trembling hands. The soaked shirt. The blue lips. That man, the man Felix had given his last $5 and his father's jacket to, was Walter S. Bennett, founder of Crestline Holdings, one of the wealthiest men in Ohio. A man whose real estate empire stretched across 14 states, whose name sat on hospital wings and university buildings, whose net worth had been estimated in the billions. Felix had given a billionaire his grocery money. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so far beyond anything his brain could process that laughter was the only response left. I don't understand," Felix said. "He was just sitting there, in the rain, alone. How does a man like that end up alone on a bench in a thunderstorm?" Catherine's expression softened, just slightly. Just enough to show something human beneath the professional polish. "Mr. Bennett has been dealing with some health challenges, early-stage memory issues. Tuesday was the anniversary of his wife's passing, Eleanor. 22 years. She paused. He asked his driver to take him to the cemetery. On the way back, he became disoriented. He exited the vehicle without the driver noticing. By the time security realized he was missing, the storm had already started." They were looking for him? For 3 hours. 8 members of his personal security team. They found him at 11:40 p.m., on a downtown bus, wearing a denim jacket that didn't belong to him, and holding a $5 bill in his fist. She looked directly at Felix. He wouldn't let go of either one. Felix couldn't speak. He told his team what happened. He described you, your name, your age, what you said to him, every detail. His memory of that night is remarkably clear. Catherine opened the leather folder and pulled out a single item, a business card. Thick, cream-colored, embossed with gold lettering. She held it out to Felix. Walter S. Bennett, Chairman Emeritus, Crestline Holdings. Build something that outlasts you. Felix took the card. His hands were steady, but his mind was spinning.
He's asked to see you personally, Catherine said. No obligation, no pressure. He simply wants to thank you face to face. And...
She hesitated, the first crack in her composure.
He has something he'd like to discuss with you.
Felix looked at Mr. Caldwell. The old man behind the counter hadn't moved. His eyes were glassy. He nodded once, slow, deliberate. Go, kid. I'll cover your shift. Felix set down his apron. He walked out of Caldwell's corner grocery in his work shirt and stitched-up jeans, climbed into the back of a limousine for the first time in his life, and rode downtown in silence. The leather seats were warm. The windows were dark. The city looked different from the inside of a car like this, and somewhere between Garfield Heights and Public Square, Felix Jackson started to realize that the smallest thing he'd ever done was about to become the biggest thing that had ever happened to him. The elevator opened on the 42nd floor. Felix had never been this high above the ground in his life. The hallway was wide, quiet, and smelled like leather and fresh coffee. The carpet was so thick his worn sneakers didn't make a sound. Framed photographs lined the walls, buildings, skylines, groundbreaking ceremonies, all stamped with the same crestline crest he'd seen on the limousine door. Catherine walked ahead, heels clicking in a steady rhythm. She stopped at a pair of double doors made from wood so dark it was almost black.
He's waiting for you inside. Take your time.
She opened the door and stepped aside. The office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking all of Cleveland, the lake, the bridges, the gray sprawl of neighborhoods stretching south. Felix could see Garfield Heights from here, a small patch of rooftops and broken streetlights miles away, looking no bigger than a thumbnail. And there, sitting in a leather chair by the window, was Walter Bennett. He looked different, clean, rested, wearing a pressed navy suit with a white pocket square. His silver hair was combed back neatly. His hands, the same hands that had been blue and trembling 2 nights ago, were folded calmly on the armrest. The expensive watch caught the afternoon light. But the eyes were the same, pale blue, sharp, clear. And draped over the back of the chair beside him, folded carefully like something precious, was a faded denim jacket with a torn left pocket.
Felix's throat tightened.
Felix. Walter's voice was steady, warm, no trace of the confusion from the bus stop. Please, sit down. Felix sat in the chair across from him. The leather was softer than his mattress at home. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Walter just looked at him. The way you look at someone when you're trying to match the face in front of you with the memory you've been carrying. You look different when you're dry, Walter said.
Felix let out a small laugh.
So do you, sir. Walter smiled. A real one. The kind that reached his eyes. I owe you a debt, Felix. And I don't say that lightly. I've built my career on understanding the value of things. Properties, contracts, percentages, margins. I've spent 50 years putting numbers on everything. He leaned forward. But what you did for me on that bench, I've spent 2 days trying to put a number on it. And I can't.
Mr. Bennett, you don't owe me anything. I just did what anybody would have done.
No. Walter's voice sharpened. Not angry, precise. That's where you're wrong. And I need you to hear this. I was sitting on that bench for over an hour before you stopped. In that time, at least a dozen people walked past me. Some looked, most didn't. One woman crossed the street to avoid me. A man in a BMW slowed down and then kept driving. He paused. You were the only one who stopped. The only one. A 19-year-old kid on a bicycle in a thunderstorm with $5 in his pocket. You stopped. Felix didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. Walter reached beside his chair and picked up the denim jacket. He held it with both hands, gently, the way you hold something that belongs in a museum. Your father's jacket. Yes, sir.
I'd like to return it to you.
He extended it across the gap between them. I had it cleaned, professionally, but I made sure they didn't alter anything. Every stitch, every tear, every thread, exactly as it was. Felix took the jacket. The fabric was soft, softer than he remembered. It smelled clean, but still somehow familiar. He pressed it against his chest and breathed. Thank you, he whispered. Walter let Felix have that moment. Then he spoke again. Catherine tells me you graduated from high school. Good grades. Accepted to Cleveland State. But you couldn't afford the tuition. Felix nodded. $18,000 a year. I've been saving, but... I know. She told me about the grocery store, the delivery shifts, the notebook. Walter paused. Felix, I want to offer you something, and I want you to listen before you respond. Felix straightened in his chair. First, a full scholarship. Not just Cleveland State. Anywhere you want to go. Tuition, room and board, books, fees. Every dollar. For 4 years. If you want to go to graduate school after that, we'll cover that too. Felix opened his mouth. Walter held up a hand. I'm not done. Second, your grandmother, Dorothy. Catherine pulled some records. You're 3 months behind on rent. Her prescriptions are running about $400 a month out of pocket. I'd like to pay off her lease through the end of next year and set up a medical fund to cover her treatment for as long as she needs it. Felix's vision blurred. He blinked hard, twice. Third. Walter stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the skyline, at the distant rooftops of Garfield Heights, and pointed. Your neighborhood has a community center on East 116th Street. It's been closed for 3 years, boarded up. I've already spoken to the city. Crestline Holdings will invest $250,000 to renovate that building, reopen it, and fund after-school programs, tutoring, job training, and a small business incubator. All of it free, all of it permanent. Felix couldn't hold it anymore. A tear slipped down his cheek. He wiped it fast, the way 19-year-old men do when they don't want anyone to see. Why? His voice cracked. Why would you do all this? I just gave you $5 and a jacket. Walter turned from the window. The afternoon light framed him from behind. His expression was the steadiest thing in the room. Because I've spent 50 years building things, Felix. Buildings, companies, portfolios. And in 50 years, not one person has ever given me something that mattered more than what you gave me on that bench. He walked back to his chair and sat down. You gave me proof. Proof that the kind of person I've been looking for my whole life actually exists. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table to Felix. Felix unfolded it. It was the $5 bill. Wrinkled. Still damp at the edges, the same one from the storm. I'm keeping the memory, Walter said. But that belongs to you. The news broke on a Friday. Cleveland Plain Dealer ran it first, front page, below the fold. The headline read, Crestline founder credits stranger's kindness for rescue during storm. By noon, it had jumped to Channel 5. By evening, it was on CNN. The story spread the way only certain stories can. Fast, wide, and with a momentum that nobody could control. Not Walter, not Crestline's PR team, and certainly not Felix Jackson, who found out he was on national television when Mrs. Patterson called Dorothy's landline at 9 p.m., screaming so loud Felix could hear her from the kitchen. "Dorothy, turn on the TV! Felix is on the TV! Channel 8, right now!" Dorothy fumbled for the remote. The screen flickered to life. And there it was. Felix's senior yearbook photo, next to a stock image of Walter Bennett in a suit, with the banner underneath, 19-year-old gives last $5 and father's jacket to billionaire in storm. Felix stood behind his grandmother's recliner and watched his own face on the screen. He didn't recognize himself. Not because the photo was old, but because the version of him the news was describing sounded like a character in a movie, not a real person who ate cold rice with hot sauce for dinner. But what happened next, in the weeks and months that followed, was real. All of it. The community center on East 116th Street reopened in 9 weeks. Crestline Holdings didn't just write a check and disappear. They sent a full renovation crew, contractors, electricians, painters, plumbers, and they worked alongside volunteers from the neighborhood. Felix was there every Saturday, hauling drywall, painting walls, carrying folding chairs up from the basement. The building had been closed for 3 years. Boarded windows, graffiti on the front wall, a parking lot so cracked that weeds had pushed through and grown knee-high. Most people on the block had stopped seeing it. It was just another dead building in a neighborhood full of them. Now it had new windows, a computer lab with 20 stations, a tutoring room, a job training center with resume workshops every Wednesday, and a small business incubator on the second floor. 4 office spaces, free rent for the first year, open to anyone in the zip code with an idea and the will to try. Mr. Caldwell was the first to apply. He'd been running his grocery store on instinct and duct tape for 15 years. No inventory system, no bookkeeping software, no website. Within 2 months of joining the incubator program, he had all 3, plus a delivery service that tripled his weekend revenue. He hired 2 new employees, both from the neighborhood, both under 25. Dorothy's medical fund was set up within a week of Walter's offer. Her prescriptions were covered. Her rent was paid through the following year. For the first time in as long as Felix could remember, his grandmother sat in her recliner without the tight look on her face, that quiet tension she carried every day, the one she thought Felix didn't notice. It was gone. She breathed easier, literally and otherwise. Felix enrolled at Cleveland State for the spring semester. Full scholarship. He chose business administration with a minor in community development. On his first day of classes, he wore his father's denim jacket, the one Walter had returned to him, cleaned and pressed but unchanged, every stitch intact. He sat in the front row, but perhaps the thing that mattered most, more than the news coverage, more than the scholarship, more than the building with new windows, was what Felix did 3 weeks after the center reopened. He started a program. He called it 5 and Forward. The idea was simple. Every month, young people in the neighborhood would commit one small act of kindness: buying a stranger's coffee, helping someone carry groceries, sitting with someone who looked lonely, and then write about it. Pin it to a board in the community center lobby. Share it at the monthly meeting. No prizes, no competitions, just stories. Within 2 months, the board was full. Within 4 months, 2 other community centers in Cleveland had started their own versions. A local church adopted the model. A high school guidance counselor built it into her curriculum. The Plain Dealer ran a follow-up piece. The headline was simpler this time. It started with $5. And it had. 1 year later, Felix was walking home from his evening class at Cleveland State. It was late, almost 9 p.m. The air had that sharp November bite, and the forecast had been calling for rain all day. He wore his father's jacket, same torn pocket, same crooked collar. But it felt different now. Not heavier, not lighter, just fuller. Like it carried more than one story inside its threads. His route home took him past the bus shelter on Euclid Avenue. He walked past it almost every day. Sometimes he slowed down, sometimes he didn't. But he always looked at the bench. The same bench where he'd found Walter slumped and shaking a year ago. Most nights it was empty, just a metal seat under a flickering light. Tonight, it wasn't empty. A girl sat at the far end, 18, maybe 19. Thin jacket, too thin for November. Her arms were crossed tight against her chest, knees pulled up, chin tucked down. She was shivering. Not the casual kind, the deep kind, the kind that makes your whole body clench like a fist. A plastic bag sat at her feet. Inside it, Felix could see a folded uniform, the kind they gave you at the fast food places on Carnegie Avenue. A name tag clipped to the collar. She'd just come off a shift. Felix stopped walking. The girl looked up. Her eyes were tired. Not scared. Just worn down. The look of someone who'd been solving problems alone for too long. "You okay?" Felix asked. "I'm fine. Just waiting for the bus." "The 10 doesn't run past 8:30 on weekdays." She stared at him. Then she looked at the schedule posted on the plexiglass wall. Her shoulders dropped. "I didn't know that." Felix stood there for a second. The wind picked up. He watched her pull her thin jacket tighter and tuck her hands under her arms. He didn't think about it. He unzipped his father's jacket, took it off, and held it out to her. "Here, take this." "I can't take your jacket." "It's a long walk without one. Trust me, I've done it." She looked at him, then at the jacket, then back at him. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She took it, slipped her arms through the sleeves. The jacket was too big on her, the way it had been too big on Felix when he first started wearing it at 8 years old. She pulled it tight around herself and exhaled. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Really?" Felix smiled, the same smile from a year ago, the kind that expects nothing. "Pass it on." He walked home in the cold. No jacket, no complaints. The streetlights on Euclid Avenue flickered above him, half of them broken, same as always. But tonight, somehow, the walk felt warmer than it should have. Some things don't need an explanation. They just need to keep moving. And that's where this story ends. Or maybe that's where it starts again. Because the truth is, Felix Jackson didn't change the world. He didn't cure disease. He didn't invent anything. He didn't go viral on purpose. He just stopped when nobody else would. He gave when he had nothing to give. And he did it without asking for a single thing in return. $5, a jacket, a moment in the rain. That's all it took. So let me ask you this, and I mean it. If you were standing in that rain with your last $5 and the only thing your father left behind, would you give it away? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to know. And if this story made you feel something, anything, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if you're not subscribed yet, come join us. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when nobody's watching. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness is the one that changes everything.